And so there were some astrological influences there. We've seen astrologer Chani Nicholas give Lizzo a reading a couple of years ago. And she's like, you're about to blow up. So celebrities are doing this all the time where they're looking at astrology, and there are businesses we know. JP Morgan Chase knew that, what's the saying, that it's not millionaires who use astrologers, it's billionaires who use astrologers.
Yeah.
So businesses are, but they should do it more. More businesses should do it more.
Hey, Joji here. I'm Astrology Hub's podcast producer and an astrologer over at Astrologer Connect. I just wanted to make sure that you knew about Astrologer Connect's Reading Bonanza Month. We're going to have all sorts of special events, but the biggest thing is that any reading booked in April, so even if you're having a reading all the way in December, as long as you book it this month, you are eligible for a 20% off by using the code April 20. And if you actually go right now, call for an instant reading, you actually get the first 10 minutes for free. Again, this is happening all throughout the month. And to claim your discount, all you have to do is just go to astrologyhub.com/connect and use the code April 20. All right, I'll see you soon.
Welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are new to the channel, you have just joined a worldwide astrological conversation that is happening here every single week, featuring some of the world's best astrologers and exploring topics from the weekly weather to specialty topics like we're going to be talking about here today, which is the benefits of using astrology as an entrepreneur. We are featuring Taylor Shuler here today. She's an astrologer on our new Astrologer Connect platform, but she also has some incredible credentials that I will share with you here in a minute. And this topic is super near and dear to my heart because as an entrepreneur myself, obviously running Astrology Hub, we use astrology all the time to help us make decisions, to help us choose the right timing, to help us understand when there will be expansive times in our business and when there are times where we need to go more internal and fortify our structures and focus on our organization, things like that. It is so helpful. So I'm happy that you're here to explore this topic. And just a little bit about Taylor. Taylor is an award-winning astrologer. She won the award for OPA's Most Promising Astrologers. She has her master's degree in cross-cultural and sustainable business management from the American University of Paris in France. She has her permaculture design certificate from Peter Cow Permaculture Association. She's the current recording secretary for the Organization for Professional Astrology, and she's now featured on our new reading platform, Astrologer Connect. I've referred so many family members, friends, especially those who are curious about astrology, but don't know much about it. And she's amazing. I also referred my business mentor, my business coach to her because I just knew that her grounded approach and her very, she's got like this earthy aspect of her, but also so wise and so keen and aware. So Taylor, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. That was such a lovely introduction. Thank you, Amanda. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. I mean, you're one of those people that like, I know my friends and family, and especially again, like I said, those people that are newer to astrology, they're curious, but they're like, no, a little unsure. I'm like, Taylor will take care of them and show them how amazing astrology can be. So let's talk about this idea. How do you see astrology playing into entrepreneurship? Where do you see it adding benefits?
Oh my goodness. There are so many benefits of astrology for entrepreneurs. It can tell you almost anything that you want to know. So if you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and you don't know where to start, just looking at your natal chart can tell you so much about who your ideal client is, what your purpose in life is, as we know, but like, how does the work that you do contribute to that? How could you best monetize your business? How should you market your business? How can you, should you use technology? What kind of work should you do? Right? So for example, looking at let's just say someone is an Aries rising or their second house is ruled by the sign of Taurus. one of the things you can do is look to the sign that rules your second house if you're thinking about how to monetize your business or how you would best attract money to yourself, and think about the body part that's associated with that sign. So for Taurus, it's a throat. So how can someone who has a second house ruled by Taurus use their voice to attract their clients? So should you start a podcast? Should you be on YouTube? Like, should you sing? Right? What are the things that you could do? Should you be a public speaker and give speeches or be a motivational speaker? How can you sort of get creative? So there's just so many things. And then you can also think about the cycles of your business. We can look at, once you actually have a business, look at your business's chart, and it can tell us an enormous amount of information. It can tell us, are you in a growth cycle? Are you in a rebirth cycle? Are you in sort of a difficult spot where you're reorganizing things and need to rethink things or shift or move? We can find where in the world your business would be most effective. I mean, the possibilities are pretty endless, and you can do a lot of prediction as well. And when I say prediction, we're not predicting what will happen, but more of like, what is the energy like and when might it be like?
Wow. I'm like, how do I book a reading with you right now, Taylor? I mean, of course, we use astrology all the time, but it's amazing how different astrologers bring different lenses to the conversation. It's almost like you can't hear it enough from enough different angles. It never gets old to hear the different perspectives of how an astrologer is looking at the chart. Of course, we do have the birth chart for Astrology Hub, so we're constantly referring to that. And for example, we've been working on this Astrologer Connect reading platform for years. I mean, it's been part of the original vision of Astrology Hub from when we started it 7 years ago. But then we've been actively working on the technology and the infrastructure and the plan and all that for 3 years. And so last year there was a moment where it could have been the year that we bring it to the world. But it was like, there was something in the chart that was just like, no, it's not quite ready. Like, you can put it out there, but put it out there and then go back and revise. Like, there's going to be these periods of revision that it needs to go through before it can really go out there in the world, which is where we're at now. But I had to be so patient, because I learned the hard way that going against the astrology, it never really works out. It's always frustrating. It's always like, man, it's not working the way I want it to. It's not working as fast as I want to. It's not as easy as it should be, all those things. So I've really learned that consulting the chart is key before we do anything, especially anything really significant.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that too, Taylor, that like it can ease the frustration?
It can absolutely ease the frustration. If there's something that's a sticking point, you're like, I did all the things, I checked all the boxes. Why isn't it working? I mean, we could also just look at the chart of your business, the inception chart of your business, which means we pull a chart, an astrology chart for the moment that you incorporated your business. So if you have an email that says you incorporated with the state of whatever, the county, the federal government, whatever country you're in, you have an email with a timestamp and like the location of either the capital city where that was located or where you were at the time, we can kind of figure out what your business's chart is. And it can be something as simple as your logo needs to change colors or your font isn't evoking the right mood for the rising sign, the midheaven, the moon, and the sun in your business's chart. If you just tweak a couple things with your branding, maybe things would go smoother. So yeah, you check the boxes. You got your branding, like you got your website, you got your employees, but there's just that one sticking point. Or maybe if you're having a lot of turnover in your business, you can look at the sixth house to see what kind of employees do you want? What kind of employees do you need? And what needs do your employees have that you should be offering them? What's the employee value proposition from sort of a talent perspective that you as a company should be offering to your employees? And then what do your employees have to offer to your company as well? Once you get that synergy moving, it's like just flows.
Man, you're bringing up ways that I haven't even considered, which is really exciting. So what about the entrepreneur themselves? So how do you see entrepreneurs using astrology to really maximize their business, maximize their opportunities, realize success in their business?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that we could think about is who's used it before. right? We can think about who's used astrology and how they used it. So it's not always just entrepreneurs. We even see politicians. I think a couple of people have probably mentioned, if you're a longtime listener, Ronald Reagan had an astrologer. It was probably Nancy who did all of the in-betweens, go-betweens. But that was timing. It was like use timing to figure out when to give the speech, when to launch the product, when to launch the course, when to do your grand opening, when to put the press release out, when to launch Astrologer Connect. I know Joe's helped a lot with Astrology Hub and Astrologer Connect and timing and stuff like that. And it really works. But you can also look at the progress chart and see what kind of cycle are you. You know, we like to look at the moon, the progressed moon, and the progressed moon can tell us a lot about, and if you're an entrepreneur and you want to use your own chart, look at your own progressed moon. Are you in a balsamic phase where it's really about dialing it back and kind of composting and taking it easy, taking a sabbatical, handing things off, thinking about, planting the seed for the next 2, 5, 10 years? Are you in sort of in a first quarter phase where it just feels like everything's moving very rapidly, and how do you want to use that energy? How can you do that? So those are a couple ways that you could use it as an entrepreneur. I think I mentioned the branding, right? What colors, what fonts, things like that. And who is your ideal client? And then you can also look at the nodes in the chart to figure out what is the purpose? What ultimately are we going for? Are we striving for? What do we do well? What do we not really know how to do? Where are we innovating? And you can look at the 10th house as well and just see, what are we going to be known for?
Okay, Taylor, one question I have. So, in businesses, they're often using these personality assessments, like the is it Bristol Myers?
Myers-Briggs. Yeah.
Myers-Briggs. And
Yeah.
it does make one up.
That's okay.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
There's all these different assessments that companies use, and they're regarded with respect, and I actually was listening to a business book recently where it was sort of like a fictional business story to illustrate points, but it was told in story form, right? And so in the story, a consultant came in and they were going to be doing team building. And the consultant was like, don't worry, we're not doing any of that woo-woo astrology stuff, and I'm like, what? Listening to this. But why do you think there is, first of all, if companies are using personality assessments to help, like A, team building, and B, team profiling to understand what strengths and weaknesses are, why is astrology a thing that's sort of outside of the box of what companies consider legitimate or valid in your perspective?
That is such a good question. So as an HR professional and, my previous life, I have used a number of those. Used the Myers-Briggs inventory, the MBTI. I've used the Hogan. I've used the predictive index. I've used IBM had assessments that we would use to test people before we would hire them. And the list goes on. So I'm very familiar with all of these assessments. There's also things that you might do for your own self, personality things like your love language and the Ikigai framework, which I'm actually a huge fan of. And I think that why do we use them? We use them because we like to, as humans, it's culturally relevant, but for the most part, avoid uncertainty, right? We want to have some degree of control, some degree of, I know what I'm doing is the right thing. I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm going to be efficient. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to have the optimal results. I'm searching for optimization and fit. These tests, for the most part, have been through enough controls that most people feel like you're not going to use it in a way that's going to discriminate against people, right? It's just about, and most corporations, most companies, most organizations know how to properly use these so that they're not used in hiring decisions and things like that. When you get into astrology, I think it's really cool to look at the overlap between them. So for example, if you just Google MBTI, Myers-Briggs, and astrology, you'll see, if you want to look into the backstory, that the MBTI was actually created based on astrology. So the Myers-Briggs, if you Google it, it was developed by 2 women. And these 2 women were students of Carl Jung. And Carl Jung, as we know, was an astrologer. He used astrology, used the archetypes. And so they took the archetypes and they codified them and they basically reverse engineered astrology so that if you know yourself well enough, you should be able to answer the questions in a way that would reflect your chart. The problem with the MBTI and these other assessments is sometimes we don't know ourselves and we have blind spots. And we as astrologers can see exactly where someone would have a blind spot because that's something that we can see due to the geometry of charts. As professional astrologers are trained to spot that. And so I've found this and it's just, I mean, I don't want to like giggle or anything, but it kind of like tickles me every time someone's like, oh, this is my blind spot. I'm like, I know it's your blind spot. Like we could see it very clearly. And they can see it too, but it's just where you kind of get that like uncertainty again. And so if you use the assessment, you end up figuring out, are you more of like a Pisces Sag archetype? I think that's like the ENFJ. Or are you more of like an Aries Leo archetype? So in all of these assessments are the archetypes. They just call them different things, right? Because astrology is just the 12 archetypes that we've come up with because 12 is one of those numbers that as humans, we gravitate towards. It just happens to work for us. So I think that's why people use these assessments. And I really like to find the way to bridge the gap and fill in the blanks for people with astrology. So if someone is comfortable accessing their team, their business, being an entrepreneur, updating their website, through some of these other tools, I get it. That works for you. I think you should use whatever works for you. If you are, die hard on the MBTI, let's go for it. I don't know how you use it like for your business, but as an entrepreneur, you could use it for your own personality. And then let's fill in the blanks with astrology. And you can then kind of see where you got your answers to some of those other things by accessing the chart. And you can also see how teams work well together or don't. Like the DISC assessment is one that's also based on archetypes, how people think, how people act or don't. Clifton Strengths Finders is another one. And we can find strengths in the chart. We've got lots of ways to describe it.
It's so funny. I had someone recently have me take the DISC assessment and I was doing it. And every question I was like, oh, that's Pisces. Oh, you mean Leo? Oh, you mean, in my mind, every single question mapped to an archetype. And at the end of it, I got the results. I'm like, okay, yeah. But why even go through that assessment when you could just look at the birth chart? And B, the birth chart tells you so much more. Like it felt so lacking now, now at this point in my life where I know as much as I do about astrology and how powerful it can be. So it's just interesting to think about, how there still is that stereotype in a lot of businesses that astrology is somehow out there and woo-woo, and yet these assessments are more valid and, respectable. And we can use them, right?
Yeah. And that was the other part of your question that I forgot. So thank you for reminding me. It's really, okay, so why don't we use astrology? I think there's a couple reasons. For me, the reason that's at the foundation of it all is that astrology is such a powerful tool. And through the centuries, through the millennia, we've lost that tool. We've lost that power because astrology started by just being available to kings and queens, to royalty, to the people in charge in government in order to wage wars and figure out strategy and when should they put a dummy king in because, the stars were saying that the king might die right now. And people, for the most part, weren't literate. So it wasn't practical to teach everybody astrology. Then when people became increasingly more literate, they realized the power that the people could have to overthrow those in power. And so that's why Tarot, that's a major reason for Tarot. Tarot was a way that astrology was then put into pictures so that we could save all of that information and pass it on and use the information and use it as a divinatory tool.
Wow.
And not lose it, right? So you can kind of see the archetypes of the planets and the signs in the deck. And it's obviously not the same. It's very, it's different, but all of those concepts are put into Tarot. And so that knowledge was taken from us in order to keep us from our power collectively. And now that Pluto's moving into Aquarius, that's a major sign that we're moving into a time when the collective, the majority, the many are being asked to take power again and have it be distributed in a way that's more equal. And so another reason why people might want to use these assessments instead of astrology is because since it has been taken from us and we're not familiar with us, with unfamiliar can be frightening and scary. We don't know what's going to happen. All of these stories and sort of like stigmatization has been loaded onto astrology in order to keep ourselves from it, in order to have us want to keep ourselves away from it, which is really just a tool of power to keep you from something that could be helpful for you. And because of that stigmatization, I think that people, they think that somehow if you have your birth date on a job application, that people are going to discriminate against you. No, I would disagree with. People might disagree with me on that, but I would disagree because I've been in human resources. I've been in law and employment law. And once people do learn astrology and it becomes more mainstream, that would I mean, it is illegal, first of all, at least in the United States, to discriminate against people based on inherited, just like who you are as a person, any of those characteristics. And your birth chart would be one of those characteristics. I would argue, I'm not an attorney, but I would argue that. And you just can't do it. But once you get hired based on your merit, then you can, figure out what you're good at and who you'd fit in well with. Why not?
Is there a signature of an entrepreneur in the chart? Like if you look at someone's chart and you see certain configurations, are you like, oh, wow, you're born to be an entrepreneur, or you would be a really strong entrepreneur? What would you be looking for?
Sure. I think there's so many that you could find, but I think that if like maybe Aries 10th house, for example, or very strong Aries signature, very strong fire signature. Because if you think about the fire signs, they really are sort of like that I archetype, that me individual archetype, whether it's Leo being like the performer, the celebrity. When you perform, you might be in a troupe, you might be with a group of people, but it's really about you, right? An actor and actress. It's like really about like the actor, the actress. Sagittarius would be like the professor or the preacher. They might have a group, they might have a congregation, they might have a school, but it's really about you as an individual professor, right? And then Aries could be, archetypally the warrior, but it's also the entrepreneur. So if you have a second house ruled by Aries, it shows that you could really make a lot of money by being who you are as an individual. Same with the 10th house, even the 6th house. So it really depends on the chart. I don't want to say like everyone with that, because you could have so many other things that are much stronger that show up for you that kind of take over for that. So it does depend on the individual chart. But yeah, if you could look at a chart and say, I would encourage you to look into entrepreneurship.
What about leadership style or management style? Are there things in the chart that you can tell about someone's like ideal leadership approach from the chart?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you could look at in the chart if that's what someone was struggling with or what someone was wanting to boost and figure out for themselves. There's a couple of things that you could look at. Usually I'd want to have a conversation with the person, like, tell me a little bit about what's going on and what have you tried? And once I have that information, then I can see in the chart, oh, they're trying to do this. And what they should be doing is this. And then you can kind of access which planets are active, which houses are active. Whenever it comes to business, work, career, the main houses you are looking at are the 2nd, the 10th, and the 6th house. So the 6th house could tell you about, the people who you work with and who work to support you. And that could tell you about your management style. The 10th house could tell you about what kind of manager you have, but also what kind of sort of legacy or impression you'll leave on everybody, which would include your management style. And you could also look at the 1st house and the 7th house to see, like, how do people see me? And you could look at the 7th house to see, like, what are people needing from me as well? And there's also another thing that you can do called derived houses, where we look at the house that rules your employees, and then we turn the chart to to look at it a little bit differently so you can figure out how those people are interacting with you and some of the decisions that they're making. Like, are the people who work to support you having trouble with their money? So then you would look at the seventh house, because the seventh house is the second house from the sixth house, and the second house rules your money. So if your employees, sixth house, are having trouble with their money, you would look to the seventh house.
Wow. It's so potent. I mean, it's one of my philosophies or theories for why it's not as used in business is because it's so complex. I mean, it's so powerful. And with that power comes so many nuances and so much that, I mean, most of you astrologers dedicate your whole lives to studying it. So like a business leader or a CEO or an entrepreneur, they're running their business. They're not necessarily going to have time to learn astrology and like how astrology can help them. So, I mean, I've always seen that there could be a great opportunity for astrologers to consult with businesses and really help them in this way.
Absolutely. I think that it is, there's a lot of people who already do it. There's a lot of celebrities who do it. I mean, if you look at, for example, Adele's last album that she put out, where was it launched? Where was it released? At the place in LA where they look at the stuff, the observatory that's happening in LA. Had her Saturn earrings on. And, so obviously we know that she was talking a lot about her Saturn return in that album, between ages 27 and 30. And so there were some astrological influences there. We've seen astrologer Chani Nicholas give Lizzo a reading a couple of years ago. And she's like, you're about to blow up. So celebrities are doing this all the time where they're looking at astrology, and there are businesses. We know JP Morgan Chase knew that, what's the saying, that it's not millionaires who use astrologers, it's billionaires who use astrologers.
Yeah.
Businesses are, but they should do it more. More businesses should do it more.
Well, they will. They will. We can actually play a hand in that. Yes. So there's also, I was thinking Paul Simon, Paul Simon has a new record and they're releasing each track on the new moon. I'm like, what? That's so cool. So like you get an email from them on the new moon. It's like, okay, here's the next song. Here's why this song is being released on this new moon. It's like, wow, that's really cool. You just see it's expanding. Okay. So for entrepreneurs out there or people aspiring to be entrepreneurs, are there any resources that you recommend? Like any places, any books or things that they can check out to start to learn enough to use it in a way that's useful in their business?
Yeah, I think, first of all, just having an astrology reading. So reaching out to an astrologer and having an astrology reading, making sure that you've got your birth date, time, and location. And if you want to use your business chart, you've registered an LLC or an S Corp or something like that, go ahead, get that information. Even if you don't have the exact location on that, if you have the date and a time, or at least a noon chart, we could use a sunrise chart. And then we could just use the capital city or the county where it was likely registered. Have that chart and just look at the chart. In terms of books, I think that I've got here Business Astrology 101 by our beloved Georgia Stathis. And, it is a big book though, right? So not everyone's going to want to read through the whole book and, teach themselves astrology. Another one of my favorites is Vocational Astrology by Judith Hill. Very classic book. I know Judith has been on the Astrology Hub. She's wonderful. And then in terms of trends and what's coming for us in the future, another one of my favorites is Planetary Cycles by Andre Barbeau. So those are 3 books that if you're really wanting to dive into astrology and learn it for yourself and you're very serious about it, these are serious books. They will help you. But I think just having a reading with an astrologer is great. And I know on my website, I'm offering something right now. So if you want to figure out who your ideal client is based on your chart or your business's chart, it's free. It's on my website and it's called How to Magnetize Your Ideal Client and How to Monetize Your Business. And then I have a bunch of ideas of how you could use your second house. And it doesn't say it like that. It makes it super simple. So all you need to know is your sign, either your sun sign or your rising sign. And there's a ton of ideas in there for every single sign on how to identify your ideal client, figure out their pain point, address their pain point based on your strengths, and then how to monetize your business as well.
Very cool. Mine's Pisces is on the second house.
Beautiful. So I think you're doing that wonderfully because you're doing the Astrology Hub and it gets out there to lots of people. And Pisces is all about spirituality and astrology and the esoteric arts. And Astrology Hub, it's all about coming with love and compassion to many people and tapping into the collective unconscious. And that's what you're doing. And the other thing that Astrology Hub does really well that would signify a second house ruled by Pisces is the camera, right? We're on camera right now. And so it's like film, camera, pictures, photos, and getting out there in that way. That's very Pisces. So
amazing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's so literal. Okay. So I love the resource that you recommended on your website. Also, if you want to book a reading with Taylor, you can through Astrologer Connect. And this is for the month of April. We're having our reading bonanza, which is our grand opening of the platform. You can get 20% off your reading with Taylor. So if you go to astrologyhub.com/connect, or actually you can go directly to Taylor's page, which is astrologyhub.com/Taylor Connect, TAYLOR Connect. Then you can book a reading with Taylor and have her help you look at your business, look at your proclivities in business. What would be the best thing for you to be doing if that's what your search is around right now. And she's amazing. She's an incredible, incredible astrologer, and you will get so many insights. It's so valuable to sit down with someone like you, Taylor. I had I'm not gonna reveal who she is, but someone very near and dear to me had a reading recently with Taylor. And she had met from the time she was little, she knew what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to be a lawyer. She wanted to be a district attorney. So she wanted to be a lawyer for the people, right? So she's done this her whole life. And now she's starting to have these feelings of like, do I really want to do this anymore? I mean, I thought I would do this forever, but it's not energizing me the way it used to. It's not getting me excited the way I used to. So she was starting to have these feelings of like, wait, do I just jump ship? She has this amazing retirement package waiting for her. And she's like, do I wait? Do I hold out? What do I do? So she had a reading with Taylor, and I swear she came out of this reading just like glowing because she had clarity on her path. And it was basically what Taylor was able to say to her is, no, don't quit your day job, but take advantage of the fact that it is a little slower right now and start learning these new things that you're being drawn to, which is a lot in the realm of spirituality and all these things that she never thought she would be interested in. But her soul is calling her in that direction. But what Taylor was able to say is, look, you're in a balsamic phase of your life. It's winding down something, but the new chapter isn't going to start for another couple years. So don't jump ship right now. Use this time to really reflect, to learn, to grow. And then in a couple years, you are going to be ready to start something new. And it will be the right time. And just the amount of confidence this gave her, I'll never forget the way she walked out of that reading because she was visiting me here on Maui. And she was like, okay, I know what to do. Like, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to keep studying. I'm going to keep going to retreats. I'm going to keep, exploring these realms. And then in 2-3 years, which is exactly when her son is going to be graduating from high school, and she and her partner had already been talking about moving at that point, it's like, oh, then that's the time we're going to be starting something totally new. So it's priceless, really, what this kind of insight can do for people, because it just gives you that confidence that you need to go forward in the way that like you kind of know deep down inside, but now you have confirmation from a perfect stranger who's just looking at your chart and able to reflect that to you.
Yeah, pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. So thank you for that, Taylor. You've helped many, many of the people that I love the most. So thank you for that. And just thank you for being available on our new platform. Thank you for all the insights you shared with us today. I can't wait to have a more business-oriented reading with you here very soon. And for all of you out there who want to take advantage of the Reading Bonanza month, I highly encourage you to check out Taylor. Go to astrologyhub.com/connect or Taylor Connect. And when you book your reading, put April 20 in the discount code, April 20. And I have one final question for you, Taylor. What do you say to people who are nervous to have a reading, where they're afraid? Because this, again, my business coach was so cute. He's like, is she going to tell me that like I'm going to die in 5 years? Because I really don't want to know that. I'm like, no, that's not what it's about. So what do you say to people when they're just nervous? They have this idea of what a reading might be and they're scared.
Yeah, I would say never fear the astrology. And if you ever run into anyone who tells you something horrible or scary, they're probably not a legitimate, in my opinion, probably not legitimate in what they're offering. And it's certainly not professional, I would say. At the least, it's not professional. You should have consent to share anything that could potentially be painful or hurtful for anyone to hear. And even then, it's really a fine line. It's a gray area. So never fear the astrology. A good, positive, professional reading is going to tell you information that is going to fortify you, that is going to validate you. It is more than likely not just going to be surprisingly shocking how accurate it is and how validating it feels and how it's what you already knew. And that's really the value, is that someone else, like you said, who's never met you before can tell you things without you really having to share anything. Like the example you gave, I had no idea about what the family composition was like, or the timing, or the ages, or the moving. I had none of that information. I just shared the information, and then this person was able to make their own decision, right? So astrologers are also not going to make any decisions for you if they're professional. They're just going to give you information that helps you to make the best decision for yourself. They're going to boost you up. They're going to empower you. They're going to want to make you feel good about yourself, because there's so much goodness that we all have to offer. And there's so much in the world these days that is kind of getting us down and bumming us out. And we don't need to be that for each other. We need to be here to support each other and cheer each other on and just help each other through our problems and through our challenges, and not create more. So definitely don't fear the astrology. It's here as a support tool, a support mechanism for you, and not something to ever make you feel bad about yourself.
Ah, yes. And that is why it's key to have a reading with a professional, legitimate, high quality astrologer. It's one of the reasons why I was so motivated to create Astrologer Connect, because I would hear these horror stories from people that had readings from who knows who these, astrologers, I'm doing quotation marks, are. But they would be, they wouldn't have a good experience. And it broke my heart, because I know what a good quality, amazing reading can do for you. And it should only be positive. It should only be supportive. And I don't mean you're only going to get positive news. I just mean it should only be the thing that helps you find strength and purpose and direction and clarity on your path. So excited to have you as one of our featured astrologers, Taylor. You're one of the few on the platform that really does focus on and can be very helpful to people in business, or if you're doing projects, or if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're wanting to launch something. Taylor is amazing at that. So check it out. Taylor, thank you so much. We love having you here at Astrology Hub, and you're just such a gift to all of us. So thank you for that.
Likewise, I'm so grateful. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for being a part of our community. And thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. Catch you on the next episode.